morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on another session of WeConnect's Academy Learning from Women Leaders Around the World series. My name is Andrea, and today I'm very happy to introduce Cynthia Spraggs. She is the CEO of Sales Beacon, a WeConnect International certified business based in Canada. In today's webinar, Cynthia will talk about how to maximize virtual team productivity. She will share strategies that have worked for thousands of virtual engagements over the past decade. She'll give you some tips on making virtual teams productive, engaged, and accountable. Sales Beacon implements enterprise sales programs via integrated virtual project management, creative, and data analytics services. Their passion is to transform how people work and live. Their methods to manage geographically dispersed teams is proven by pages of testimonials showing higher revenues and extraordinary productivity gains. I'll let Cynthia introduce herself, but I would like to remind all attendees that you are in listen-only mode. That means that you're muted, and if you have any questions, please type them down in the chat or Q&A boxes. Also, if you experience any challenges, you can send me a message using the same chat boxes. I'll read all questions for Cynthia to respond at the end of the webinar. Take this opportunity to make as many questions as possible. Thank you, Cynthia, for being here with us today.
Great. Hi, and great, Andrea. Thanks for the great intro. Today, I want to talk about how to make virtual teams super productive. From the basics of how you choose virtual workers to how you manage cross-functional global teams. Have you ever dialed into a call where it seems like you just rehash all the stuff you talked about last week? Someone takes notes and send them out. Then the next week and the week after, you show up again, and it's the same thing over and over again. You have people that don't show up, don't do anything, produce less than stellar results, don't get approvals needed to move forward, like zombies on the line but not really connected. Welcome to Virtual Team Chaos, where managers all over the world try to apply traditional management systems that work for managing teams in one building to remote teams and remote projects. Traditional management doesn't work, no matter how many new approaches you try, like PMP, Six Sigma, Agile, Scrum. Trust me, we're certified in all of them, and they were not invented for the virtual world. I wrote my master's thesis on corporate telecommuting strategies in 1994, and I'm publishing a book on next year on making virtual teams productive. I've worked, consulted, run companies, huge projects, without ever working in an office. Today, I'm going to share what I've learned in 30 years of managing virtual workers all over the world and over 1,000 virtual team assignments. We've encountered pretty much every virtual team situation across IoT, enterprise sales, marketing, engineering, finance, HR, event planning, across corporate, nonprofit, and government. And I hope by the end, I'll convince you what works to make virtual teams accountable and producing results. Today's agenda, first of all, we'll start with your virtual workers. Are they the right fit? Are they equipped? Are they set up properly? Your intact team, simple ways to make sure people are able to collaborate online. Your cross-functional team, creating accountability, getting things done, counting through virtual noise, reaching extended stakeholders. Virtual work has so many benefits environmentally to employers for quality of life. Study after study shows that virtual workers are so much more effective than office-bound workers. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out why virtual workers get more done. More hours in the day, less illness, able to integrate work-life balance, control of their workspace, way better on the environment. What's really interesting is you put those same people on virtual teams, and they can be extremely unproductive and very, very difficult to manage. A ton of studies finds difficulties with virtual team management. One study by Siemens across 9 countries found that 34% are perceived of loafing or not doing their share. And even more startling, 75% of virtual team members are more likely to get distracted during virtual meetings. Think about that stat for a minute. This means that on any call with a virtual team at any particular time, 75% are tuned out. This means that 75% of you, on average, are not listening right now. I don't take it personally. I take it as a fact of managing virtual teams. This is a pretty big issue if you're trying to get people to do something and they're remotely connected to you. The focus today is virtual team productivity. To be successful, along with common sense, we need to morph concepts from change management, communications, and program management into the mix. First, we'll cover virtual team basics, how to have very productive remote workers. The first and most basic element of an intact team is whether the team members should be working remotely. How do you tell this? Easy. Test to see if they are introverted or extroverted. Most of the people on this call should be familiar with Myers-Briggs or DISC or a score of other tests to determine whether someone is introverted or extroverted, whatever you want to call that term. True extroverts do not do well working by themselves. I know this because we've had people leave for lower salaries and an hour commute because they couldn't stand the silence. If you want an unproductive virtual worker, set extroverts up by themselves at home. It's like depriving a plant of sunshine. Eventually, extroverts will simply shrivel up and leave. If for some reason you don't have corporate office space, put extroverts somewhere where they can interact with others. They will be fine in shared workspaces like WeWork or satellite offices. In fact, I think this is one of the reasons for the increase in success of these work models, is all the extroverts who have to work remotely and can't work by themselves. You have the right people. Now we have to set them up properly. Do they have a space to work that is quiet and relatively free of distractions, if not considered a shared satellite work office? Have you given training on ergonomics so that they don't have work strain? Are they equipped properly? Do they have the right headsets? We have a blog on our website on our top headset picks from all of our team. We did about a year study on it. Is your video gear set up so it looks professional? If they deal with external stakeholders, what does their video background look like? Is it clear and centered, or do you have a terrible background with someone's head cut in half? Consider cameras on little tripods. Any of the previous, if not managed, will lead to lower productivity. It is essential that virtual workers look and sound good, because by being remote, they miss the interactive element of office-based teams. Finally, and I can't stress this enough, if you have regular IT maintenance, do you sweep their business PCs for non-business games or applications? Candy Crush is a huge time suck. Get it at all other games off your remote worker PCs. Okay, so you've got the right people. They're all set up properly. They're not spending half their lives playing games on a company computer. They're ergonomically set up with great headsets. They look really great on camera. They're excellent virtual workers. Now let's put them on a team. Let's assume that it's an intact team and they report to you. This is the easiest scenario because you have higher fireability. My management team is spread across Canada and at any point could be spread all over the world. We meet weekly from wherever we are and everything gets done, all without any office at all. Your team needs the right collaborative tools. Whether you use Google Docs, Office 365, or some other set of cloud system, you have to make it easy to find everything, and nothing should reside on a PC that isn't also on a cloud or on your own server somewhere. You need repositories to share work and information, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive. You need ways to communicate without filling up inboxes. This is really important to try and reduce the amount of email. And you need to be able to meet easily. So Skype, WebEx Teams, GoToMeetings, Hangouts, Slack. You need a communication platform. You need online dashboards with links so that it's easy for everybody to find, if they're especially across numerous time zones. So they can see status, they can share best practice, they can see action items, they can share the links. So either you can start with a wiki, you can use Smartsheet or Drive or Basecamp or Trello. We use a combination of Office 365, Box, Smartsheet, and WebEx Teams and meetings along with Skype. Smartsheet and Box have some incredible collaboration abilities. Master project dashboards, quick links to find everything everyone needs to find. I could do an entire webinar on all the great web forms and ways that you can communicate, but we've got more things to get to. Okay, so you have the right people, they're all set up properly, they're on a team, so let's add some process. The core of a virtual team is meetings. You need to treat meetings like contracts. There are a series of decisions and a set of actions that people agree to, whether you're following Robert's Rules of Order or simply having a free-for-all. First of all, it's very highly recommended to record all your meetings because remember, 75% of people probably aren't paying attention. You should have minutes of decisions, risks, and action items, and who does what by when, who's agreed to do all this within 24 hours. You should have automated action item tracking. We use Smartsheets for this. You should have automated status reporting. You should have automated follow-up and reminders if due dates are closed and missed, and I'm going to go into this a little later. We use a lot of web forms to submit action items to across departments, to submit issues or ideas, so that when we get together, everybody's already submitted them and they're sitting there on a sheet online. And most importantly, if you have a mix of introverts and extroverts on the call, invite everyone to give an opinion on decisions. Don't just say, does anybody have any ideas? Because the introverts aren't going to say anything. Ask them by name what their opinion is. We've implemented this and it's been very, very successful. You should also, at least once a year, set up a situation where they can meet at least a few of their other team members. It makes a huge difference having a personal touch point. You don't need the entire team to meet at one time, but what you want is to create interlocks so there are stronger connections, especially groups that might have conflicts like sales and operations or HR and sales or almost anybody for that matter. You have the basics covered. Correct virtual workers, they're set up properly, tools and processes, virtual team is collaboration, discipline, you've got reporting and meetings. The next step is to manage a large cross-functional team. Cross-functional teams by their nature are comprised of people who do not report to you. You might not even run the team. Your manager may have put you on the team. In large organizations, people can be on numerous cross-functional teams, usually in addition to their day job. They may work in an office, or they may be located remotely, or they may be somewhere in the middle of nowhere. All this leads to virtual team chaos. And you must assume, plan, and expect that you will have each of these scenarios in each cross-functional virtual team engagement. 1, nobody pays attention or they don't show up. If they do show up and pay attention, a lot of people don't do what they say they're going to do. These are just facts of life. Even if they show up and pay attention and try and get done what they say they're going to do, they don't have the ability to get it done. And the most important one is they don't have support from their own extended teams for what you need. These are where most of the problems in virtual teams are because you don't have control. So let's start with the first one, a completely distracted person. This can happen on any team, but it tends to run rampant on cross-functional teams because they're seconded from their day jobs. Understanding why people aren't paying attention on virtual calls is pretty easy. In today's business environment, most people are completely maxed out, just trying to keep up. They are bombarded with business and personal emails, collaborative tools, social media, texts, phone calls, FaceTime, not to mention dating sites, swiping right, new matches from genealogical sites, from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep. It wasn't too bad in 1994 when I wrote my telecommuting thesis. It was much worse in 2004 with AOL and Yahoo, and now it's completely out of control. With all this going on, it certainly isn't unusual that they are doing something else while your meeting is going on. So how do you cut through this noise during the meeting? How do you get through knowing 75% on average don't pay attention? First, you have to assume the entire group is not listening. Get everybody on camera. However, if you have multiple screens, it's still very easy to do other things while you're on camera. So it's not, these aren't, most of what we do happens after the call. Call on people randomly for opinions. Break into subgroups. Hold polls to vote for decisions. Make them pay attention. Ask everyone to present a short update or report, and do this on a random basis. You don't want to embarrass people or cause VPs to lose face, but you'll be amazed after 1 or 2 meetings how this improves things. Because even doing all that, we still assume no one pays attention during a call. The bulk of our virtual team strategies actually happen after the meeting. The rest of this webinar is going to be what you can do afterwards to get those action items done and get the teams to produce. It is in between meetings that curing virtual team chaos happens. So we'll start with communication. After meeting strategies are based on the assumption that no one will pay attention to anything you send out. Even so, the first step, remind everyone what they missed, whether they attended the call or not. And 2, communicate for impact so that everyone actually sees and pays attention to the message. The first step is identical to an intact team. First, we record the meeting, we record the decisions, we send out action items to everyone with auto reminders. We very clearly highlight what everyone is responsible for and when they're responsible for delivering it. And we do this by email and whatever collaboration tools people are using. Second, those emails have got to be communications designed for impact, not data. What do I mean by this? Your communications have got to be compelling. You've got to capture attention, and you've got to convey the message as succinctly and effectively as possible. Regardless of how mundane the topic, your focus should always be to sell ideas and tell stories, not disseminate information. If your team has been seconded from their normal jobs, they might be on many cross-functional virtual teams. It is your job as virtual team leader or team member to keep what you need to accomplish top of mind. It means getting attention and always focusing on simple, succinct, visual. Expect it will be forwarded, so make the language something your grandmother will understand. Remember, as many emails you get in a day, your virtual teams, depending on their level and job, could get 10 times as much. It's pretty easy to get lost in all of this, so you have to stand out from the crowd. You have to grab someone's attention long enough to convey the information you need the reader to understand. You have maybe 3 seconds, which is how long this attention slide took to move up as someone scrolls through their inbox. And remember, they're probably doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, maybe 10 other things. The subject line and first 3 lines in any email are like Park Place in Monopoly. They are gold. Absolutely, you cannot waste them. Use asterisks, big headings, and make sure you highlight exactly what the issue is or who has to do what. Throw out what you learned about meeting minutes. Make sure your team communications focus on what they need to do. Anything that doesn't highlight what people need to do or risks, put at the bottom. Here's a real set of ongoing meeting minutes that I sanitized about noxious weeds. I just found it online. Take a look and see if you can find the information on what you're supposed to do, especially if you multitasked or missed this call. Hint, it's on the last page. Sadly, this is how most meeting minutes go out. All of the most important real estate in the email is used on information that people really isn't actionable. Here's what these same minutes look like in my inbox and in my reading frame. Even if I click the message, I have to click 8 times to scroll down and find out. How much time do you think I'm going to dig through this? That's right, about 0. This is probably a series of meetings that drags along. There's no specific person assigned to tasks, and the due dates are nebulous. With virtual teams, you simply do not have this luxury. You have to be extremely precise on exactly who is accountable for what and when. You can't stick your head in an office door and ask them how's it going or even who's doing what. Virtual teams need specific targets, dates, and who is responsible. I've made a couple of small changes to the order of the information and the fonts so that the information is immediately apparent. I still wouldn't put ASAP as a due date. You need to be very, very, very specific. Our basic meeting minutes look more like this. We add color, formatting, and images depending on the virtual team. Believe it or not, the more senior, the more color and pictures. You got to tell stories. This has all the meeting details and is designed to convey the essential information as easily as possible. Another thing, mix it up. Don't send the same thing out every week. Send something different. Disruptive is a really overused word, but this should be your aim. It helps people pay attention because they see something new rather than the same email 67 times in a row. Okay, so through communication strategies, you've gotten everyone's attention. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Now you need to follow up a lot. Remember, the study said that more than 1/3 of people on teams don't actually produce anything. How do we get people to come to the meeting with what we need to move forward? First of all, you have to assume nothing's done. Don't wait until something is due to find out it isn't done. Follow up early and follow up often before the due date. You need to create an early warning system about someone not getting anything done or buying in or getting stakeholders on board so that you don't have last-minute challenges that hold things up. Follow up early so you'll be able to remediate if something is off track. Don't wait for the next meeting. Check well in advance. Follow up by phone, email, text, especially if you know they have a history of not doing anything. Chances are they haven't started working on something you need tomorrow. If this doesn't work, and this is a critical deliverable, you have to escalate, and we're going to talk about 2 ways to do this. Just know that escalating is really tricky because you're usually going around someone and they may not be super happy about this. You're going to make them look bad and lose face, and that's the opposite of what we usually try to do. Make absolutely sure that you've used every other option first. Direct escalation, which is going above someone to their boss, can be really risky if you're an employee and the non-producer is many levels above you. Why you really want to call someone on the carpet who outranks you by 5 levels? You want to escalate that they are slowing down the entire initiative? Even if they aren't in your reporting chain, be really, really careful with this. Unless you have very strong executive support above the underperformer, the reality is it can be career limiting to call someone on the carpet. Whoever it is will call over to your VP and soon you'll be running virtual calls from Siberia. Trust me, I can speak from personal experience on this. It is much easier for an outside consultant to do any of this. There's no career at risk and their job is actually to go in and get work done. So if you have to escalate something using a direct approach and is about someone higher than your pay grade and you have a contractor, get them to do it. If for political reasons you can't do a direct escalation, you need to use an indirect escalation using a status update. This status update needs to be tailored to draw attention. You need to make it obvious to everyone who is holding things up. Hopefully, this will nudge whoever it is to get off their butt and start producing. I had a situation a month ago where we used exactly the strategy and it worked like a charm. You need a status update that conveys information succinctly and with impact. If you don't have any problems, a status update buried in an inbox won't really matter. But where status updates become powerful is to highlight challenges and risks. And you have to design status updates not to get lost. On the left is a typical status update, pretty standard from project methodologies. How much action do you think it'll get, and how easy it is to figure out if something's off track? Not really. If you're in a risk situation, you can't afford to have people ignore your message. On the right is an example of a status update that will get some attention. If there are problems, put a big risk over the entire thing. Make it as strong as you need to. This is exactly what we did when we had a non-responsive team member who was an executive, and it worked perfectly. And don't forget to use strong subject lines. Be smart and aware of the politics and potential fallout from escalating things. Just say project at risk, attach the status, and let it speak for itself. Do the same thing in collaborative workspaces if you're using them. I would be amazed if you don't get some action from these. Okay, so you've gotten attention, everybody knows what they're supposed to do, you've escalated risk for the non-producers, and status slides have gotten everyone starting to do what they said they were going to do. What happens if you're still not seeing results? What if whoever is supposed to be doing something can't actually do it? This happens to us all the time. What if they're willing to produce, but they can't? They think they're rock stars, but are completely incompetent. It's called Dunning-Kruger effect. If you haven't heard about this, just check out TED Talks. The people who are the most incompetent appear very competent. And people like us on this call can't spot it because we assume everyone is as competent as we are. It's brutal. I've been caught in this a ton of times, especially with people we bring in as subject matter experts. It is rampant at all levels of a government, nonprofits, company, nonprofits, and government, and even universities. When you think of all the recent news about legacy students and pay for admission at Ivy League schools, it makes a lot of sense there are people in jobs they are totally not qualified for, or consultants who are not qualified to be giving the advice they're giving. I've seen so many times where we depend on this person and we have to scramble because what they produce is a disaster. Depending how senior they are, you have to be very careful with these people because if you don't manage communications with and about them, they can become your worst enemies and try to derail what you are doing. Remember, these people think they're incredibly good at what they do. It's like telling somebody who thinks they're Einstein that she doesn't know basic math. The best strategy is to cut whatever they're doing into smaller pieces and simplify their contributions so they are successful. If you make them look bad, they're going to go to battle. You do not want them as enemies. As soon as you identify this as an issue, you need to start damage control. Reduce what you expect from them. Break down their work into smaller pieces. Make sure you communicate that this is necessary to success. Quickly find people who can work around the deliverable. Thank them for their contribution and avoid working with them again like the plague. There's a lot of stuff online about Dunning-Kruger. You should check it out. Okay, we've gotten everyone's attention. We've dealt with the sloths and the incompetent people. The next thing we need to handle is to make sure everyone has stakeholder support, because most of the things we do online deal with rolling out new initiatives that go out beyond the team that we're dealing with. And one of our assumptions is that our team members don't have extended stakeholder support. Extended team stakeholders are users, influencers, approvers, executives, likely connected to your virtual team, who are critical to success. You need to understand exactly who is impacted, influences, or needs to deliver anything related to what your team is meeting about. You need their buy-in, and you need them to communicate for you into their areas. They need to understand what you are doing and why it has value. Maybe they're users or salespeople who need to learn or adopt new tools or sell things. Maybe it's other groups. You need to announce or roll out training across their areas or showcase a new solution. Or they could be regulatory and even external to your organization. Always focus on exactly who you need to get on board and why. Who do we need to get engaged to ensure success, and make sure you do this early in the team engagement. You need to craft a RACI for your entire extended team based on exactly what you need to achieve. I'm assuming everyone on this call has worked with these. Since I don't have time to cover RACIs in depth, again, it's something very easy to Google. RACIs are great at who does what, but for virtual teams, you need to understand why they should even care about what you're doing. If you don't understand what matters to your extended team members and their extended teams, if you don't understand what matters to your team, which means understanding everybody's what's in it for me. You might create engaging messages, but you aren't going to get buy-in. For example, if you promote the virtual team deliverables as achieving more revenues, when all anyone really cares about is lowering costs, you're not going to hit the mark. Make sure what you're communicating matches what they care about. For virtual team stakeholders, you need to control the message as much as possible. Don't leave it to individuals on your team because you end up with consistent results. Make sure the message from everyone is consistent and on target. Every communication from your team must be geared to creating buy-in from executives, coworkers, and staff of your virtual team members. If you need a lot of people on board for success, everything that goes out, including spreadsheets, status, action items, decision logs, has to be designed for communicating, not churning out data. Don't give them stuff like this and expect them to dig through it. Whatever information you need them to understand, make it obvious and immediately apparent. This is why when we consult on large virtual initiatives, we have onboard business intelligence and creative services on all of our assignments, because we've got to make communications that are immediately apparent where the value is. A targeted communication strategy could make the difference between you getting budget or scope approvals or being turned down or extending your timeline if you discover Dunning-Kruger issues. The squeaky tire gets the grease, especially if it communicates well. Because if you have a really challenging deliverable and cross-functional teams spread across the globe, without a good strategy to create buy-in, your best option might be to pray. So in summary, always remember what you must assume about each virtual team, especially cross-functional ones. Nobody pays attention on calls, or they don't even show up. They don't do what they say they're going to do, or they don't have the ability to get what you need done. But worst of all is the extended team stakeholder support. You have to get this on board, and you have to get this on board early. Make sure you have the basics covered. Introverts and extroverts, how do you set them up? How to use collaboration tools and processes to help intact teams perform. Then for cross-functional teams, even though we don't really expect a lot of attention during the meeting, after the meeting, we use communication and escalation strategies to keep people accountable and on track. We also make sure we map out extended team stakeholders and make sure we are communicating consistently according to their care-abouts. So a little bit about Sales Beacon. We've rewritten the rules on how to manage virtual teams. Our common sense blending of traditional management, project, and communication strategies has helped Fortune 500 companies be more productive and drive more revenues for over a dozen years. Because our methods are radically different than traditional runs, we train and mentor all of our people, most of whom work across rural communities across North America, but mainly in Atlantic Canada. Our two key service areas are really geared to two different things. Sales Pass, Sales Productivity as a Service, is an enterprise sales support model that increases revenues and closes deals faster. We've been running it for over a decade with some pretty amazing results. And Team Pass, Team Productivity as a Service, is our core consulting, project management, and creative services that makes global cross-functional initiatives successful on time and on budget. Our clients hand off their cross-functional teams to us, knowing we will get it done with very little stress on them. For more information, you can check out our case studies, blogs, ebooks, and other resources on our website. One thing you might be interested in is our QBR template, which is a PowerPoint template designed specifically for virtual teams. And it's a quarterly business review is like a status update done quarterly. And it's really a lovely model. And next year, you can also check out our book on making virtual teams effective. Good luck. Have a great day. Look forward to hearing from you. And now I'll turn it over to Andrea to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was a great webinar. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. I would like to encourage everybody who's online, if you have any questions, please type them down in the questions or chat boxes. I will read them for Cynthia to respond. If you have any questions, this is the moment to do them. If you would like to see a recording, perhaps you joined later, there will be a recording that will be shared on a follow-up email tomorrow. And this webinar is also going to be uploaded to the We Connect Academy YouTube page. We have some questions here. Do you have any tips for managing teams in multiple time zones?
Yeah, in fact, most of our projects are done across multiple time zones. We have a resource in the Middle East, and we've had them in Germany, across the world. Actually, we even had them in Asia. And that's why recording the meeting and sending out the action items and doing that. I mean, obviously, you're going to try and get people to dial in at 2 o'clock in the morning. I know when I travel, sometimes I've got to dial in. But a better way is to really use the after meeting strategies to follow up. It's in between the meetings where all the action happens. 90% of the people or 75% of the people aren't going to be paying attention. And B, if there are multiple time zones, you know, again, especially if this is a project in addition to their day job, there's just a point where you're not going to get the attention. So I would say use the after meeting strategies on sending out action items, sending out meeting minutes, following up with people. I mean, you can do that very easily after the call. And that's what I would do.
Great, thank you. Do you have recommendations for teams that work across languages and cultures?
Yeah, this is a difficult one. We actually, I have to do some more research on this. I have to be honest that we have done this in the past, but because we work mainly with Fortune 500 companies out of the US and Canada and a little bit out of the UK, we haven't had the issue with different languages that a lot of other companies or teams might have too. So I'd welcome anybody to send me some tips on this, because we have not had to deal with a lot of this. Most of our working language is in English. The one time we did do it, again, what we did is we recorded the call and then we had transcriptionists transcribe it into the various languages and we sent it out. And that seemed to be the only way we could do it. Trying to go across languages on one call when you've got multiple speakers, again, during the call is extremely difficult, not only because they're remote workers, but you can do a lot with just send it out to a transcription service and then they can see exactly what happened. Obviously the recording is not going to work, but we don't have good automated systems for transcribing meeting recordings, but having those notes and very, very detailed notes transcribed, I mean, that is the one way we have dealt with this in the past when we've had to deal with it.
Great, thank you. I have another question. Among the good practices that you have suggested, like sharing a webcam and doing a little bit more of like a follow-up practices, in cases where you have been able to, support companies in doing the transition, how have employees reacted to these changes? Is typically a good, adoption process, or do you see some retaliation sometimes? Feeling maybe that they are being micromanaged, or that all of a sudden they are not being trusted. That can maybe cause some, negative reactions.
Yeah,
How does
yeah,
that look?
absolutely. And we have had negative reaction. When you go in and you've got especially if it's an operating team that has been working together for some time, and they are they have certain work practices that are not inconsistent with what you have as a work practice, obviously following up. That's why I say you've got to be very, very mindful. So what we do is we introduce the changes very slowly. It's I hate to use the analogy, it's like boiling a frog, where you put the frog in cold water and then you turn on the heat slowly. And by the time the frog knows it's boiling, it's a little too late. So we've had to do this in our own company as well. So we introduce one new thing, and and then we get that going, and then we'll introduce maybe people calling on people randomly for opinions, and we have to assess when we go in exactly what the temperament is of the team. But again, if you are going to, if your point of what you're trying to do is to make teams productive, once they start seeing the results, there's more buy-in. They're actually more bought into the whole process because it's easier on them. They don't have to go to another meeting and see nothing happening. So it's kind of like it's almost like it's a self-propelling engine. You get the improvements. They start seeing some other improvements. You put another one in, and it's just, again, it doesn't, if you try and do everything overnight, if you try and do, especially when working with large enterprise sales teams on big initiatives, we are very, very careful not to introduce too quickly. And I think that's something I probably should have mentioned, that slower is better on some of these things. Some of these teams have been operating for years. So if you take another month or two to implement some change, it's not going to make that big of a difference. So I would say go slowly.
Okay, yeah, that's a great tip. Because sometimes, yeah, you've been working with your team for so long, you have some practices already very used to doing whatever you're doing, and then all of a sudden, change can have bad reactions. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Do you have any other questions? I mentioned that this webinar has been recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and also shared on a follow-up email that all attendees and absentees will receive tomorrow. If there's no more questions, I would like to thank Cynthia for the amazing webinar you have put together. Thank you so much for your time. And if you need any more information, if you would like to follow up with Cynthia, she has shared her contact information. I would encourage you to follow up in case you are interested perhaps in doing business with Cynthia. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for today, and I will also share the recording with you.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate the opportunity. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.